My friends, when we examine the rise of nations throughout history, one thing becomes absolutely clear. Great powers don't just emerge from nowhere overnight. They are constructed piece by piece through unwavering vision, incredible patience, and iron determination. And today, as we study what India is accomplishing, we are witnessing a blueprint, sophisticated, calculated, but profoundly ambitious, a blueprint that will absolutely astound not only America, but every nation on this planet. Now, let me tell you something. India has not been standing still waiting for permission to succeed. They have made massive investments in their population, in their technological capabilities, in their industrial infrastructure, and yes, absolutely in their defense systems. But beyond all of that, they have invested in redefining themselves as a rising global superpower. While other nations believe that loud confrontation demonstrates strength, India has discovered something far more effective: strategic excellence without the drama. They are not seeking a public battle for attention. They are pursuing a methodical victory, like a master strategist who plans every move in advance. America has dominated the world stage for most of modern history. We have constructed powerful alliances, developed cutting-edge technologies, and defended freedom across the globe. But India is demonstrating that leadership in the 21st century may not emerge from the traditional displays of dominance. It may emerge through superior knowledge, through mastering global commerce, through controlling cyberspace, and through building relationships across every continent. And here is what will truly shock everyone. This is not about India developing a hostile plan against America. Absolutely not. The shocking truth is that India's strategy involves ascending so methodically, so brilliantly, that one day the entire world will wake up and discover they have already become a dominant force. They are already establishing the new rules. They are already shaping the decisions of nations both nearby and across the ocean. So what does this mean for us Americans? It means we cannot take our global position for granted anymore. We must understand this emerging reality. We need to learn from it, adapt to it, and engage with this new India, not with fear, but with genuine respect. Because history demonstrates that when great nations rise to power, the intelligent response is not stubborn resistance. The wise approach is to learn from their methods, cooperate where possible, and prepare for the changing landscape. And so my hope is that we as an international community will view India's transformation not as a menacing threat, but as a powerful reminder. A reminder that the future will be shaped by those who invest in educating their people, who pursue innovation relentlessly, and who possess not just military power in their hands, but visionary leadership in their minds. That, my friends, is the true significance of India's hidden strategy. This is not about war or destruction. This is the quiet revolution of strategic leadership, and it will fundamentally reshape the world we live in. When we discuss India's remarkable progress in the modern era, it is crucial to understand that what we observe today, the rocket launches, the satellite programs, the digital infrastructure, the sophisticated defense systems, none of this happened by chance. None of this materialized overnight. These extraordinary achievements represent decades of careful, long-term planning that India has been methodically executing. A comprehensive strategy that wasn't always visible in international headlines, wasn't always making front-page news, but was always advancing forward. And when we step back to analyze the complete picture, we realize that India's journey represents not a sudden breakthrough, but rather deliberate strategic decisions made with remarkable patience and incredible foresight. Consider India during the years immediately following independence. This was a nation wrestling with widespread poverty, with massive hunger, with virtually no modern infrastructure. Many international observers believed it would take generations before India could compete with the established global powers. Yet, even in the midst of those enormous challenges, Indian leadership made a pivotal decision to invest heavily in knowledge, to invest seriously in scientific research, and to invest strategically in educational institutions. They constructed research laboratories from scratch, they funded universities extensively, and they established the foundation for what we now recognize as the Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO. They didn't yet possess the rockets or the satellites, but they absolutely had the vision. And vision, my friends, is always the first component of every successful strategic plan. Fast forward to the present day. India is not only launching satellites into space successfully, they are accomplishing this at a fraction of the cost that other nations require. They have successfully placed a rover on the lunar surface, they have targeted missions toward Mars, and they are establishing themselves as a major space power for the 21st century. But the real lesson here extends far beyond space exploration. It's about what space capability represents, the ability to think strategically long-term, to compete at the highest technological levels, and to use innovation as a weapon of both progress and international influence. Because when a nation can construct rockets, when they can master complex engineering challenges, they also develop the capacity to strengthen their defense capabilities, to secure their cyber infrastructure, and to negotiate from a position of confidence on the international stage. And let me be clear, India's defense developments are absolutely not accidental either. This is a nation that has studied the global power structure very carefully. They have observed how military strength has shaped historical outcomes. But instead of simply copying existing models, they have chosen a path of selective innovation. Where they cannot yet manufacture independently, they form strategic partnerships. Where they can produce domestically, they refine their capabilities and expand their capacity. Their investments in indigenous defense projects, the Tejas fighter aircraft, the BrahMos missile system, the nuclear submarine program, these are not merely about weapons acquisition. They are about achieving strategic independence. They are about ensuring that India never becomes completely dependent on any other nation for their national security. This, too, represents a crucial component of their long-term strategy. Now, some might argue that every country develops weapons, every nation attempts to defend itself, but here lies the critical difference. India is not building blindly or reactively. They are building according to a carefully layered strategic plan. Simultaneously, as they invest in conventional defense capabilities, they are also making enormous advances in the less visible but equally critical battlefields of tomorrow: cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, quantum computing research. Think about this carefully. In the conflicts of the future, victory may not belong to the nation with the largest traditional army, but to the country that can control information flow, protect its digital networks, and disrupt the technological systems of potential adversaries. India has recognized this shift early in the game, and they are preparing accordingly. Beyond defense considerations, India has placed tremendous emphasis on digital infrastructure development for their own citizens. Projects like Aadhaar, their comprehensive digital identity system, or UPI, the Unified Payments Interface, are not simply convenient services for their population. They represent the foundation of a completely digital society. They enable India to skip entire stages of development that other nations require decades to complete. They also provide India with something even more valuable: comprehensive data. And in the 21st century, data has become the new oil. The nation that understands how to use it responsibly, securely, and strategically will possess a major advantage in shaping tomorrow's economy. But again, none of this is happening accidentally. None of these developments are occurring in isolation. When you connect all these elements, from space technology to defense capabilities to digital infrastructure, a clear picture begins to emerge. And that picture reveals a nation that is planning not just for the next political cycle, not just for the next trade agreement, but for the next century of global leadership. Let me provide a historical example to make this strategy clearer. In the mid-20th century, the United States made massive investments in our interstate highway system. At the time, people assumed it was simply about building roads, but what it actually accomplished was connecting industries, accelerating commerce, improving defense mobility, and unifying our vast nation. It was a long-term investment that generated benefits in countless ways for decades to come. Today, India is making a similar kind of strategic bet, not on physical highways alone, but on digital highways, on space pathways, on technological frontiers that will define the 21st century. And what makes India's plan even more impressive is how they have combined ambitious goals with practical realism. They understand they cannot yet outspend America or China on defense budgets, but they also understand they don't need to. Instead, they search for strategic leverage. They identify areas where innovation can multiply their influence exponentially. They pursue partnerships where cooperation can accelerate their progress dramatically. They target markets where their products, affordable, efficient, reliable, can successfully outcompete established competitors. This is genuine strategy. This is long-term thinking. This is the hallmark of a nation that is not drifting aimlessly, but actively driving its own destiny forward. Now, why does this matter so much for America and for the entire world? Because when a nation of more than 1 billion people develops such a comprehensive vision, the global impact is inevitable. India is not only preparing to defend itself effectively, they are preparing to lead in industries that will shape tomorrow's economy: space technology, renewable energy, information technology, biotechnology. They are preparing to influence global standards in cybersecurity, climate action, and international trade. And in pursuing this path, they are sending a quiet but unmistakable message to the world. The era of passive India is finished forever. This is an India that plans strategically, an India that executes flawlessly, an India that rises with clear intent and unwavering determination. And here is the deeper significance that we must understand. For far too long, the international community viewed India as a developing nation, as a follower in global affairs, as a country that would always remain on the periphery of real power. But if you examine the evidence carefully, you discover that India has been rewriting their own story all along. Their achievements in technology, in defense, in digital transformation, these are not sudden surprises that caught everyone off guard. They are the direct results of a strategic playbook written decades ago, refined year after year, pursued with absolute determination and unwavering focus. That is precisely why I say none of this is accidental. Everything we see today is the manifestation of a vision that was conceived long ago and has been methodically executed ever since. And so, as we attempt to understand the future of global power dynamics, we must never underestimate India's capacity for long-term strategic planning. We must never assume that because their progress appears quiet and methodical, it lacks strength or significance. Very often, the most powerful transformations are those that unfold steadily, consistently, without dramatic fanfare, until one day the entire world suddenly realizes that everything has fundamentally changed. That is the story of India's technological and defense advancement, a story of patience and persistence, a story of strategy and vision, and most importantly, a story that is only just beginning to unfold. For most of modern history, the United States has been recognized as the center of global power, economically, militarily, technologically. After World War II, America emerged not only as the victor, but as the architect of international institutions, the author of global rules, the leader whose influence extended far beyond our national borders. From NATO to the United Nations, from the World Bank to the international trade system, the entire structure of the post-war world carried America's distinctive imprint. And for many decades, that dominance appeared completely secure and unshakable. Other nations rose in prominence, but they typically rose within the framework that America had helped design and establish. But today, the global picture is shifting dramatically. Not through a sudden military conflict, not through an open challenge to America's authority, but through something quieter, more sophisticated, and in many ways more powerful than traditional confrontation. The rise of India as a global player that uses diplomacy, economic leverage, and technological innovation as instruments of international influence. India has studied the history of superpower confrontation, the wars between great powers, the arms races, the ideological battles, and they have deliberately chosen a completely different approach. They have chosen the path of strategic excellence without unnecessary spectacle. Let's examine their diplomatic approach first. For most of the 20th century, India positioned itself as a leader of the non-aligned movement during the Cold War. They refused to be pulled entirely into either the Soviet or American sphere of influence. That positioning represented a form of quiet independence, an assertion that India would not simply follow others, but would chart its own distinctive course in international affairs. In recent decades, that diplomatic strategy has matured significantly. India has built strong cooperative ties with the United States while simultaneously maintaining productive cooperation with Russia. They have partnered with European nations on trade initiatives while strengthening defense relationships with Israel. They have engaged with China economically, even while standing firm on territorial border disputes. And across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, India has established itself as a reliable partner, never fully committing to one camp exclusively, but always keeping their strategic options open. This is not diplomatic accident or confusion. This is diplomacy as sophisticated strategy. By building bridges with many nations while binding themselves to none too tightly, India has quietly expanded their international influence across multiple regions simultaneously. And in doing so, they challenge America's traditional dominance not by confronting us directly across the negotiating table, but by ensuring there are multiple tables of power and by securing a seat at each of them with growing confidence and authority. Then we must consider the trade dimension of their strategy. America has long functioned as the engine of the global economy, the largest consumer market, the hub of international finance and investment, the center of technological innovation. But India has understood something profound about our changing world. In an era where billions of people are moving into the middle class globally, the balance of consumption and production is shifting dramatically. And India, with its population of over 1.4 billion people, is positioning itself not just as a manufacturing workshop for the world, but as a massive marketplace in its own right. Consider this remarkable transformation. In the 1990s, India opened its economy to global markets. They liberalized trade policies, they welcomed foreign investment, and they unleashed the entrepreneurial potential of their private sector. Since that pivotal decision, India has become a global hub for information technology services, a major center for pharmaceutical production, and an increasingly important player in advanced manufacturing. Their services sector, from call centers to sophisticated software development, has connected them to every corner of the global economy. And as their population moves up the economic ladder, their domestic market has become an irresistible magnet for international companies seeking new growth opportunities. What does this economic transformation mean for America's traditional dominance? It means that while the United States remains economically powerful, India is no longer simply a participant in the global trade system that we design. They are becoming a driver of that system. They can influence prices in global energy markets, shape supply chains in critical technologies, and provide competitive alternatives in industries once completely dominated by Western firms. And they accomplish this not through economic confrontation or trade wars, but with the quiet force of scale, consumer demand, and technological innovation. And speaking of innovation, this is where India's challenge to American dominance becomes most striking and significant. For decades, the United States was universally recognized as the undisputed leader in technological breakthroughs. Silicon Valley, NASA, the internet, biotechnology, these were all American innovations that shaped the modern world. But India has studied this American success story very carefully. They asked themselves a crucial question: how did America build this technological leadership? And the answer became clear through careful analysis, through massive investment in education, in research infrastructure, and in entrepreneurship. So India began to replicate and adapt these successful strategies for their own context. They invested heavily in their institutes of technology, producing some of the world's most capable engineers and scientists. They nurtured a startup ecosystem that has now become the third largest in the world after the United States and China. They embraced digital transformation not as a luxury for the wealthy, but as an absolute necessity for national development. Because with over 1 billion citizens, efficiency was not optional. It was essential for survival and progress. Today, India leads the world in digital payment systems. They lead in affordable medical innovation and satellite launches that cost a fraction of what Western space agencies typically spend. Their engineers and scientists are not only working successfully in India, they are leading major global technology companies from Google to Microsoft to countless others. And here lies the quiet but profound challenge to America's technological dominance. Innovation is no longer confined exclusively to the laboratories of Silicon Valley. It is happening in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, in Pune. It is happening in small startups that are finding revolutionary ways to deliver healthcare to rural populations using smartphones or to provide solar power to villages completely cut off from traditional electrical grids. They asked themselves a crucial question: how did America build this technological leadership? And the answer became clear through careful analysis, through massive investment in education, in research infrastructure, and in entrepreneurship. So India began to replicate and adapt these successful strategies for their own context. They invested heavily in their institutes of technology, producing some of the world's most capable engineers and scientists. They nurtured a startup ecosystem that has now become the third largest in the world after the United States and China. They embraced digital transformation not as a luxury for the wealthy, but as an absolute necessity for national development. Because with over 1 billion citizens, efficiency was not optional, it was essential for survival and progress. Today, India leads the world in digital payment systems. They lead in affordable medical innovation and satellite launches that cost a fraction of what Western space agencies typically spend. Their engineers and scientists are not only working successfully in India, they are leading major global technology companies from Google to Microsoft to countless others. And here lies the quiet but profound challenge to America's technological dominance. Innovation is no longer confined exclusively to the laboratories of Silicon Valley. It is happening in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, in Pune. It is happening in small startups that are finding revolutionary ways to deliver healthcare to rural populations using smartphones or to provide solar power to villages completely cut off from traditional electrical grids. And the brilliance of India's approach is that they innovate not for luxury markets, but for necessity. They create solutions that are affordable, scalable, and exportable to other developing nations. And in a world where billions of people still struggle with basic needs, those kinds of practical innovations carry enormous global weight and influence. Now, some observers might argue that America still dominates globally. Our military remains unmatched. Our economy remains vast. Our culture continues to influence people worldwide. And all of that remains true today. But what India is accomplishing is shifting the fundamental ground beneath America's feet, not through direct confrontation, but through a different kind of competition entirely, by demonstrating that you don't need to outspend the United States militarily to become a global power. You can outthink, outtrade, and outdiplomacy your way to international influence. You can build strategic partnerships not through force or economic pressure, but through trust and mutual benefit. You can attract allies not by demanding loyalty, but by offering attractive alternatives and genuine cooperation. This, my friends, is the quiet revolution of India's comprehensive strategy. They are not trying to replace America through conflict. They are not seeking to destroy the international system. Instead, they are showing the world that there are multiple paths to global leadership, multiple ways to exercise influence, multiple approaches to shaping the future. And in doing so, they are creating a new model of power for the 21st century, one based on knowledge, innovation, economic dynamism, and strategic patience